The agenda for the webinar is to share the webinar plan. All of you can see my screen. The agenda for today's call is to share the webinar plan for today and future webinars. I'm to talk about introduction and overview of all TPF software products. We are very glad to start this TPF software webinar initiative. As part of this initiative, TPF software will be conducting webinar on a monthly basis, and the focus on this webinar is to share the knowledge on zTPF GI or in zTPF related TPF software related products. And webinar will generally be scheduled for about 40 minutes. The training or the demo will be for the first 30 minutes, and then we will open the floor for questions at the last 10 minutes. These webinars will be recorded and uploaded, and all the registered users will also receive the links after the webinar is completed. And for any further or future webinars, we will be posting the schedule in our website, and also we will be sharing this information in the LinkedIn and Facebook pages. And we'll also share, in TPF software, we do have customer reps for every customer we have using zTPFGI. So those customer reps will also send email notifications about these webinars. Let me start with introducing zTPFGI suite of products. The TPF products, we have an end-to-end solution. We are not only concentrating on the application development. The tools what we develop is assisting the customers in application development, in regression testing, and connectivity manager or resource manager or TPF Explorer. So I'll try to talk about the overview of these products on few more slides. Basically, zTPFGI is our main tool. It will be used for it is IDE and a graphical debugger, and it also has several subproducts integrated. Connectivity Manager is our tool which provides virtual connectivity for TPF systems which do not have any external resources attached. Regression tool is a quality control tool. And Resource Manager is an automation tool, and TPF Explorer is a tool to browse and interact with our TPFDF database. Let me start with Connectivity Manager. I think the TPF systems are getting more and more complex, and the test systems in most of our customers, we do see like there are 40 test systems or even 80 test systems. So it's very difficult to provide physical connectivity to all the test systems. And generally, only one or two main test systems has all the external resources. But users are connecting to different test systems which do not have external connectivity. Using our Connectivity Manager, we also call it as TTFS, TPF to TPF Functional Server, which works basically using a client-server architecture. Using this Connectivity Manager, we can provide virtual connectivity to the TPF systems which do not have any physical networks attached. These TPF systems, which can be configured as client, can actually interact with TPF systems which can be configured as server, having all the external resources, and still run the transactions and send the transaction to the external system, send the message to the external systems, get the response, and the response is now transferred back from server to the client. So using this Connectivity Manager, we can provide virtual connectivity to all the test systems which do not have any external resources. And this Connectivity Manager is basically more like a message switch. The customer can also use configuration files to configure what kind of messages he wants to route from client system to the server system. And basically, you can even control, if I have to take an example, in case of an airline customer, you can define rules to say all the traffic from BA to be routed from this client system to the server, and all the transactions related to Lufthansa or any other airline should be processed within the client itself. So there are configuration files which the customer or the administrator can set up some rules to decide what kind of message traffic does this connectivity manager needs to take care. And the next solution is regression test facility. This is a quality control tool. Earlier in 4.1, we had a tool called CMS TPF RTF. That tool was actually running on a CMS TPF, which was a simulation of TPF. But here in zRTF, this tool actually runs on the real TPF system. So basically, using this tool, the customer can capture the events by running his scripts before loading the programs, and then he can load the programs which are scheduled to go to the production and run the same scripts and capture the same events. Now he can compare these events and then identify if there are any issues due to these newly loaded programs. This tool is a quality control tool. It will help the customers to identify any issues even before getting these programs loaded into the production. I do have an illustration slide on this. So this RTF is actually run based on 3 phases. As part of the phase 1, we have to run the input script with all the input messages and capture the events which we are interested in, and then load all your programs which are scheduled to go to the production. Run the same input script again, capture the same events, and then now as part of the phase 3, or what we call as a compare phase, you compare the events on the log captured part of the phase 1 and phase 2, and this phase 3 can identify if there are any issues. The resource manager is an automation tool. Generally, most of the customers have several test systems, like probably hundreds of test systems or even 50 or 60. So it's very hard for the test system management group to manage all these test systems. Whenever the system goes down, they have to either use, if they have an internal automation tool, or they have to either manually bring up all these test systems. It's a lot of effort. So using this resource manager, we can configure this to manage the pool test systems or the shared test systems, and this resource manager can monitor the resource utilization in these test systems. It can actually, if any of the test systems goes down, it can automatically bring up the test systems to the norm state, and it's ready to use to the users. And in case if a particular test system is not in use, the resource manager can be configured to put this test system on sleep. So by doing that, you are actually saving a lot of resources, and it's also very easy to configure. The administrator will be managing this tool, and he has to just set it up once, and this resource manager can manage the pool test systems and also the shared test systems within the customer environment. And the DF Explorer, this tool will assist the application programmers to actually browse TPFDF files. This is a graphical interface. You can even overlay dissect panels on these DF data, and using this tool, the application developer can browse, add or delete or even modify LRECs on a fixed or a pool or an index file. And we are also enhancing this tool to be configured at different security levels. Like not everyone in the application group should be able to update or delete or modify the LRECs. So there has to be some level of administration security level that can be managed. And this tool will, as part, TPF Software is also working on a new release. We are doing the quality testing now. As part of this new release, we'll also include this tool. Okay, let me now talk about the zTPFGI, which is actually is our main product. This product is again an end-to-end solution for the application development. This product is not only a debugger or an IDE, it has several sub-products which are embedded. It has graphical debugger, integrated IDE, it has DF Insight, trace output viewer, it has performance analyzer, it has asynchronous functionality, it has dump viewer, it has many more. It has message run, it has visual log. So it has several subproducts which makes the testing for the application developer much easier. And it's all graphical and easy to use and easy to learn. I'll just go through the overview of some of all these products at a very high level. Okay, IDE is our integrated development environment. It supports assembler, C, C++, and SaberTalk, and it can integrate with any source control software the customer is using, and it is very easy to use. We support compile, build, and if you are very familiar with Windows Word, when you are actually editing a program, most of the Windows Word functionalities works like Control C, Control V, or the copy paste, or the right click, select all, find all, or the replace all. It's the most of the Windows related functions works in this editor, and this editor is being constantly being enhanced. With the current editor, it's also been like we are also enhanced to have functionalities similar to LPACs, like Xedit. Like you can actually, if you're very familiar with the Xedit commands, you can even use those on the editor. It also has an outline view. If you look at here, it has an outline view. If you are editing a C program, all the functions related to the C programs will be displayed on the right hand side. You can just click and then go to that routine. It has a search facility. So it has many functionalities which makes editing and developing from the development point of view. It makes it very easier for the application developer. And using this editor, you can edit multiple files, and you can even there are, if you see on this slide, there are many features which are listed. It's not only there are only these features, there are many more. And when we move on to the future webinars, we will focus on IDE. We'll try to get into the more detailed explanation of this IDE and take you through a demo where it explains like what are the functionalities or the features available. So there are many more what you are seeing in the slide, right? So even we do have a compare facility, like you can compare with the programs, you can compare with the previous version of the program with the current version of the program to quickly identify what are the changes, before you commit the program to the moving to the production, those kind of things. And there are online help. There are keywords which we identify in the editor. You can actually place your, if you are editing an assembler program, you can actually place your cursor on any keyword, and if you click F1, it actually takes you to the IBM website where the help manual is. So it's basically very intuitive, graphical, and easy to use tool for the from the development perspective. Since now all the development is happening on the Linux, we do also have a Linux terminal emulation as part of this IDE. So we will get into more details on this IDE in our next webinar. I'll move on to the next sub product, like graphical debugger. This is our main product. Right? This is a graphical interface to debug TPF programs. This has many, as explained earlier, this has been integrated with several sub products. It has many functionalities and features, and we'll have separate sessions on webinars or on graphical debugger. Basically, you can use this tool to trace your application transactions at the source level or at the macro or the instruction level. There are terminal emulations, like every time a user connects to the TPF or user connects to using GI, when he connects to the TPF system, we allocate minimum 2 terminals. We call it as ALC terminal and also a command terminal. The ALC terminal is basically a debug terminal wherein the application programmers issue their application entries and then set some trace and start debugging their process. Right? This tool also supports debugging external resources like TCP, AP, MQ. This is part of the asynchronous. I do have a separate slide on the asynchronous resources. And you can do source level trace. It's easy to set breakpoints. It's there. And as a from the application developer, TPF is a very complex system. TPF programs are also very complex. But using our tool, he can concentrate more on his work, doing his unit testing, doing debugging. If he's debugging a dump, he can concentrate more on that. And instead of having a tool which is very difficult to use, this graphical debugger makes his life much easier in terms of unit testing and debugging and source level tracing, those kind of things. And we support tracing assembler, C++, right? And also in terms of C++, we do support tracing optimized code and also unoptimized code. And now we are all in Z, so all the registers are 64-bit. So in the zTPFGI debugger do support 64-bit information, and and we have some very small features like which makes it much more interactive and intuitive. Like where any changes, when you are stepping through the transaction, if there are any changes in the registers, we highlight those changes by changing colors, and you can actually right click on any data level and get a data level on the fly. You can drop a data level, you can actually do a flip C, and there are many features on this. And we also support multiple ECB trace. Like if you look at the snapshot what I have in this slide, there are several ECBs here. Like generally every transactions in TPF, most of the transactions do have multiple ECBs. So you can control all the ECBs. The developer can decide which ECB he wants to let it run. So there are multiple tabs which gets created in the ECB, on the ECB window, and the developer can activate or make one of the particular tab as active, and then let those ECBs run. In case there are chances sometimes you might get into a deadlock situation because one of the ECB is holding a record, and then now you are trying to let the other ECB run, which actually needs the same record to be process. So in that way, we do have, like, if there is a terminal, if the terminal is hanging, we have functionalities like you can unlock the terminal, so that the deadlock is something that you don't get into every day. So you can unlock the terminal, reset the terminal, and then start your testing again. So you can actually double click on any data level to look at the core, and most of the times this core block, if you have a desect, you can apply that desect as we call it as applying panels. So these panels are generated on the fly when you compile or build a program. The updated panels are already ready to use, so you can actually double click on its core, and under the when we get into more detailed discussion, in zTPFGI there is a tab called System tab. Under System tab you have panels. You can drop down that, you can click on that button, and the drop down you will see all the panels available for that customer environment. You can choose the panel you want to apply on the core, and then now you can look at the variable name and the variable value. You don't have to remember the displacements or anything. And we have other features like share load sets. Like since now there are more than one users who are getting connected to the TPF system, and you don't want to load your load sets or the program changes to everybody. So we do have facilities like selective loads. Like you can choose to load the load set for only your session. And also sometimes if you are working on a project, there are multiple people who are involved in a project. The users can share the load sets. Like user 1 who has loaded selectively, who has selectively activated a load set XYZ, the user 2 now can share that load set. Then So those kind of sharing will also help when you're working in a team on the same project. Uh, on the graphical debugger, we will actually have separate detailed sessions in, in in upcoming webinars, right? And other subproduct which is also very useful and easy to use is performance analyzer. Uh, the performance analyzer is also, we also call it as transaction recording and examination tool. Basically this tool is to collect the statistics of a transaction. Like most of the times in TPF, the performance is also a very big concern. So when you are making a program change, using this tool, you can make sure that before loading, you can collect the statistics of a particular transaction before loading your program changes, and then you can now load your program changes and collect the same level of statistics, and you can compare the statistics to make sure there is no spike in the performance in terms of I/O usage, or in terms of memory usage, or in terms of number of calls, number of instructions executed. So this tool actually allows the programmers to collect the statistics of a transaction at different levels. Actually, you can actually collect the statistics at a summary level, or we call it as a transaction level, or at the ECD level, or the program level. And this statistics has several information. We collect I/O usage, we collect memory usage, we collect program usage. We also collect the instruction count, the CPU utilization, the files, the file pools, the macro counts. So there are several informations which we collect as part of this the performance analyzer collects as part of when you try to execute a transaction. This is a very useful tool for people who are for customers who are working to improve the performance too. Like we work with some of the customers who actually who are running projects to bring down the performance in the TPF. So this tool is very much assisting them in terms like now, in order to improve the performance, the customer is doing several research in trying to cut down the I/O counts, trying to cut down the number of DF calls you make, trying to use some of the facilities what zTPF is providing. But when you start making those changes in the programs, how do we validate that these changes are actually really bringing down the performance? And using this T-Rex, you can actually collect the statistics before making the program changes and after making the program changes. And this tool also supports a compare. So using the compare utility, you can now compare the statistics and be sure of like, okay, the changes what we made are now brought down the I/O counts, or brought down the program usage, or the instruction counts, kind of things. And Trace Output Viewer is also a subproduct which is integrated in the zTPFGI debugger. TPF system is a very complex system. There are hundreds or even thousands of programs in this, loaded in the system. Every transaction, it goes at least, it actually hits minimum 500 to 1,000 programs. So in case if a programmer is now working on a dump, or if he is now trying to analyze or understand a program flow of a particular transaction, it's very difficult when you start doing it manually. So this using this trace output viewer in GI, you can actually run a transaction, set some trace options, like capture all the macros, capture all the instructions, or capture all the program enter backs, and then when you execute this transaction, the log is now the zTPFGI now collects all the required information for this transaction. And the trace output viewer allows you to browse these logs. It's a graphical interface. Using this graphical interface, now you can browse this log to understand the program flow. And there are several tabs in this trace output viewer. If you look at in this slide, there is a tab called program flow. Using this program flow is a graphical representation of the program flow of that particular transaction. This makes programmers they can save a lot of time using this tool to understand a transaction or the flow of the transaction, and it's all graphically represented. It even has a search facility if you're looking for a particular, now if you're analyzing a particular dump and you want to know who is calling this program ABCD, you can just collect this kind of a log, and then using trace output viewer, you can use the search facility to look for that program, and then any entire to that program will be displayed. And now you can easily find out, okay, who is calling this program, and where should I set the trace. So now you can get to the next level of debugging. And this makes the debugging or the analysis much easier. And in case if you want to share your analysis, or if you want to share what your about your findings, you can even export the trace output in several formats. You can export it in an Excel, you can export it in HTML or CSV or text or an XML. Or if the log is too big, you're not interested to export it completely because there is a lot of data which you are not interested in, you can actually copy a section of the log by just doing selecting the lines what you are interested. Just do a Control-C and Control-V in an Excel or in any other document. ASYNC Trace is, again, this is a functionality which allows the user to trace the incoming traffic to the TPF. The TPF is not a standalone system. It is connected to several middleware systems, or it is even there are traffic coming into the TPF from a web services, or from different test systems, or from different interfaces of different external resources, or traffic coming from a different GDS or a different airline kind of thing, right? So if you are changing a particular program ABCD, which actually is invoked by a transaction or a message which is coming from an external resource, you can use this asynchronous functionality. These asynchronous resources has to be pre-configured. The administrator who is supporting this tool in a customer environment can actually configure this asynchronous resources. Using this asynchronous resource, the user has to just activate this resource when he is ready to capture the incoming message. And we can set some, in TPF there are hundreds or even thousands of messages coming into the TPF system. Like using configuration files, you can configure to have certain rules or filters which actually allows the user to capture the message which he is interested to trace. Right, and once the ECB is captured, now all the rest of the functionalities which are supported in the zTPFGI are valid. Now you can now set a source view trace. You can, and once the ECB is under zTPFGI control, even the asynchronous message which is coming from external resource can also be set up to invoke your selectively activated load sets. So you can now set macro trace. You can set different trace options. So rest of the functionalities remain same once the ECB is captured, and now the user can just use it as a normal transaction. And we have also included some functionalities like these asynchronous resources. Once it is activated and you capture the message and user is now tracing. See, this is a very expensive resource in terms of when it comes to the TPF. We cannot keep it active in the TPF test system all the time, because if we start tracing it, either there are two problems. One, we will start checking all the messages coming into the system, so that might cause some performance issues. So we have included some features in this asynchronous. That is, when this asynchronous is in not use, or once the user captures the ECB and he completes his testing, the asynchronous automatically gets into a disabled state, so that there is no performance hit on the TPF system. And in case if the user wants to trace it again, he has to just click on this window and then say activate the resource. Again, DF Insight is a tool to open TPF DF database files while you are debugging. A DF Explorer, which we spoke earlier, is actually a tool to browse the TPF DF database, but DF Insight is more like while you are in, if your transaction is actually doing a couple of DF calls, and if you want to look at the user or if you want to look at the data, you can actually use DF Insight. It's again embedded with in the ECB window. If you look at this ECB snapshot in this screen, in this slide, there is a DF Insight icon. While you are in Trace, whether you are in source view Trace or whether you are in normal Trace or the macro or the inspection Trace, you can always click on this icon, and this DF Insight actually it's a graphical interface. It actually displays all the active user blocks at that particular time of the trace, and then it also displays it's actually more like a Windows Explorer window. You will see all the DF files on the left hand side, all the DF files which are actively open, and you can expand that tree to look at if that DF file has the user, and if there is a data, or if there is a DB space. If you have executed a DB space to get a work area, those work area is also displayed. Now you can now click on the SUSE, and for each file you can double click and bring the data on the right hand side. There are different tabs which gets created. Now you can click on the SUSE to look at the SUSE fields, then click on the data to look at the LRECs. You can even change the LREC and then update it using this tool. And if you have a DB space or have a work area, you can also double click on the work area and you can edit the work area on the fly using this tool too, right? And dump viewer, this tool, like as I said earlier, like we are working on a new release. The QA testing is in progress, and we will be introducing this dump viewer as part of this release. The dump viewer is an online dump viewer. Like many times, if you're working on an issue which are if you want to look at the online dumps instead of getting into post processing, you can actually use this graphical interface. This actually shows all the current dumps in the TPF system, whichever the TPF system you are connected using the zTPFGI. It's again the more like an explorer view. You will on the left hand side you will see all the dumps, all the online dumps in the system. You can double click on the dump to actually look at the summary information, and you can double click on any of the registers. Once you double click on the registers or any of the code blocks, the view of this tool will be exactly the same like the ECB window. While you are if you're using GI to trace a particular transaction, I think if you are an existing user of this zTPFGI tool, you might be familiar with the ECB window and the registers and the data levels. So we have tried to keep the view as exactly the same, so that when you double click on the registers, the code blocks will be exactly the same. You can even apply the panel on the code block, and the view is, and we display the 64-bit registers, the ECB layouts, the code block view, everything is the same, and we support the double click on the registers and data levels. Okay, now I'll try to we'll try to open up for questions. If you have any questions, actually in the go-to webinar, there is a symbol called, you can see a symbol of hand. If you can raise your hand, and then Chitra will allow you, will activate that particular the attendee, and then you can now ask your questions if you have any.
Hi everyone, if you have any questions, please click on the hand symbol so that you'll be put in a queue and be given a chance one by one to get your answers for your questions from Nagaraj.
Okay, I think there is one question. I think as we said, TPF Software has started this initiative, the webinar. We will be conducting this webinar on every month. We definitely see a lot of benefit for both TPF software and also for the product users. We will get into more detailed discussion about on these topics. The next webinar we will talk about zTPFGI and IDE. We will focus on the IDE part of the zTPFGI, and we'll get into the features and functionalities of IDE. So if you have any questions, even you can even once you sign off from the webinar, you will be taken through a survey questions and a feedback. There are some feedback questions which will pop up. We do request you to please fill out those, and we are also starting an initiative called email notifications. So these are bi-weekly notifications. The email notifications will have tools and tips of zTPFGI and its functionalities. So most of the time there are several features and functionalities in GI. Sometimes we want to make sure that we pass the knowledge to the users. So like for example, if there is a shared load set, how do I use a shared load set? Or there is something called Cadillac load, or how do I load using a load deck? So there are some small tools and tips which we would like to share with the users. So once you sign off, there is an option in the survey questions. Would you like to get a email notifications? Please do click if you are interested to receive those notifications, please do click yes, and we'll start sending you the tools and tips. And and thank you all for joining this webinar, and we hope to see you again in our next upcoming webinars. We are pretty sure like this is going to be very useful to you, both for TPF software and the users. And thanks again. And you can the schedule of the webinar will be posted on our website. Will be posted on our LinkedIn page and also on the Facebook page. We'll also pass the schedule to our customer reps. The customer reps will then pass it on to the respective customer and product users. So thank you all for your support, and we look forward to see you on the next webinar. Mitra, do you have anything to add?
Please respond to these survey questions, and thank you for your response for the poll. And we see that we schedule this webinar in a convenient manner so that everybody can attend this webinar without any issues. Thank you all.
Thank you.